The Suez Canal is open. It has been open every day for the past several years. The channel is dredged, the locks are operational, the transit authority is staffed. There is no technical obstacle to using it. And yet, for much of 2024 and into 2025, most of the world's major shipping lines were paying an additional $1 to $2 million per voyage specifically to avoid it. The canal that moves roughly 15% of global trade had ships sailing 7,000 extra kilometers around the bottom of Africa rather than pass through it. Container lines, tankers, bulk carriers, all choosing a detour that added 10 to 14 days to every voyage and burned enormous quantities of extra fuel. The canal was not the problem. The 2,000 kilometers of water you have to cross to reach it were. The Suez Canal is 193 kilometers long. It cuts through the northeastern corner of Egypt, connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, and through the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean beyond. Before it existed, the journey from Europe to Asia required sailing around the entire continent of Africa, a voyage of roughly 15,000 kilometers. The canal reduced that to approximately 8,000 kilometers on most routes. It opened in 1869 and has been one of the defining pieces of infrastructure in the global economy ever since. Today, roughly 12 to 15% of global trade by value transits the canal each year. That includes a significant share of container shipping between Europe and Asia, most of the oil moving from the Persian Gulf to European refineries, and large portions of global grain and industrial goods flows. When the canal functions normally, it is the most economically productive 193 kilometers of waterway on Earth. Egypt knows exactly what it is worth. Canal revenue is the Egyptian government's second largest source of foreign currency after remittances, consistently ahead of tourism. In the fiscal year ending June 2023, the Suez Canal Authority reported record revenues of approximately $9.4 billion. That figure represents roughly 6 to 7% of Egypt's GDP. For a country of 105 million people, the canal is not just infrastructure, it is the financial spine of the state. In 2014, Egypt's government launched one of the most ambitious infrastructure campaigns in its modern history. President El-Sisi announced a plan to expand the canal, adding a parallel channel that would allow two-way traffic along a major portion of the route, reducing average transit times and increasing the number of ships the canal could handle per day. The project was financed not through external borrowing, but through a domestic bond campaign. The government sold investment certificates to ordinary Egyptians, companies, and state institutions, raising the equivalent of approximately $8.5 billion in a matter of days. The expansion was completed in August 2015, ahead of schedule. The stated goal was to double canal revenues by 2023. The new channel would attract more traffic, generate more tolls, and compound Egypt's single most reliable source of hard currency. That projection did not survive contact with events. In October 2023, Hamas launched attacks from Gaza into Israel. The Israeli military response that followed triggered a cascade across the region. In November 2023, Houthi forces in Yemen, citing support for Palestinians, began launching drone and missile attacks against commercial vessels in the Red Sea. The attacks were initially sporadic and targeted. They became systematic. By January 2024, almost every major container shipping line had suspended Red Sea transits. Maersk, MSC, CMA, CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, Evergreen. One by one, they announced rerouting via the Cape of Good Hope. The calculus was straightforward. Insurance premiums for Red Sea transits had spiked dramatically as underwriters priced the attack risk. The cost of a single successful strike on a large vessel, in hull damage, cargo loss, crew injury, and litigation, exceeded the fuel and time cost of going around Africa on most routes. The United States assembled a multinational naval task force, Operation Prosperity Guardian, to provide escort and protection in the Red Sea. The effort deterred some attacks and intercepted others. It did not restore confidence in the route sufficiently to bring the major carriers back. Drone attacks are cheap to produce and difficult to stop at scale. A warship that intercepts one drone for several $100,000 in missile expenditure is not over enough engagements. A sustainable deterrent against an adversary, that can manufacture the next drone for a few $1,000s. The attacks continued through 2024. Transit volumes through the Suez Canal fell dramatically. Various estimates put the drop in container shipping transits at 50 to 70% compared to pre-crisis levels. Canal revenues fell accordingly. Egypt, which had borrowed against the canal's earning potential to fund the 2015 expansion, was now servicing that debt on a fraction of the projected revenue. Here is the structural problem that no Egyptian government policy can solve. Egypt owns the canal. It controls the canal entirely. It charges the tolls, manages the traffic, decides the rules. What it does not own is the Red Sea. The Red Sea is a 2,250-kilometer stretch of international water bordered by Saudi Arabia and Egypt on the west, Yemen and the Horn of Africa on the east. Ships approaching the canal from the Indian Ocean must transit the entire length of it. They enter through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the southern end, a choke point only 30 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, before sailing north to the canal entrance at Suez. Egypt has no jurisdiction over the Bab el-Mandeb. It has no authority over what happens in Yemeni waters or in the international waters of the Red Sea itself. It cannot install defenses along the approach route. It cannot compel other nations to protect the corridor. It cannot reduce the insurance premiums that carriers use to decide whether the route is viable. Egypt controls the ditch at the end of the corridor but has no mechanism to make the corridor safe. This is a vulnerability that has always existed in the canal's value proposition. It simply had not been tested so directly before. The 2021 Ever Given blockage, when a single container ship ran aground and closed the canal for 6 days, cost approximately $9 billion per day in delayed trade. That crisis lasted less than a week because it had an engineering solution. A ship ran aground. A ship could be refloated. The Houthi crisis has no engineering solution. It has only a political and military solution that the relevant parties have not been able to provide. The economic consequences for Egypt have been severe. Faced with collapsing canal revenues alongside a chronic shortage of foreign currency, Egypt entered into an expanded international monetary fund support arrangement. The IMF committed approximately $8 billion to Egypt in 2024, alongside a separate investment commitment of $35 billion from the UAE. The Egyptian pound underwent significant devaluation. The combination of canal revenue loss, currency depreciation, and imported inflation produced economic conditions that hit Egyptian households directly in food and energy prices. The expansion project that was designed to make Egypt's position in global shipping more secure instead amplified the consequences of the disruption. Egypt had built more capacity for revenue it could no longer reliably collect. The 2021 Ever Given grounding made the Suez Canal famous to people who had never thought about it before. It demonstrated in 6 days what economists had known for decades. A significant portion of the global supply chain passes through a single channel, and when that channel stops, the effects are immediate and visible. The Houthi crisis made a more uncomfortable point. The canal does not need to be physically blocked to be economically blocked. Ships do not need to be prevented from entering Egypt's waters. They only need to be discouraged from entering the 2,000 kilometers of international water that precede it. Egypt's ownership of the canal, its technical control, its investment in expansion, none of it provides any protection against an adversary operating outside Egyptian jurisdiction. Every product you buy that traveled from Asia to Europe or from the Gulf to any Atlantic market carries within its price some legacy of that 2,000-kilometer exposure. Sometimes it reflects rates set when the route was open and efficient. Sometimes it reflects the surcharges applied when it was neither. Egypt built the world's most productive canal. It cannot protect the sea road that leads to it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.